Backstage issues are growing by the day in the realm of AEW. What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky Durays, right here on the All Out Review Extra, talking about the post-show media scrum that went down, all of the drama that went down regarding CM Punk going off on the EVPs, Hangman Page mentioning Colt Cabana as well, and the backstage fight that apparently happened right after CM Punk left the media scrum. What's up, everybody? Again, this is the WrestleHavoc podcast with the All Out Review Extra. Before I get on with all this craziness, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more content. Also, make sure if you guys want to listen to the podcast in audio format, it is available on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all those platforms. It is available if you guys want to listen in audio as well. But without any further ado, let's get into all of this craziness that went down. So, of course, we had All Out, which, in my opinion, was a really fantastic pay-per-view. Of course, we had the return of MJF. And the number one question that I'm going to ask all of you in this video right here, this little extra that I'm doing, is everybody talking about MJF at this point? Everybody should, but realistically, the answer is no. Nobody is talking about MJF. Everybody is talking about CM Punk and the altercation that he had. Of course, that is including Ace Steel with him throwing a fucking chair at Nick Jackson and biting Kenny Omega and all this craziness that's going on. So what led us to this point? Well, I got all the stuff right here. Basically, it all started back in May. Realistically, it started back in May during the build for Hangman Page and CM Punk for their match at Double or Nothing, in which CM Punk was going to win the AEW World Championship, in which he did. Of course, it all started in a promo, actually the go-home show on Dynamite before Double or Nothing, in which Hangman Page, quote-unquote, went into business, quote-unquote, for himself, mentioning workers' rights, and Punk took offense to that, thinking he was mentioning Colt Cabana, and as you guys know, the Elite and Hangman Page are friends with Colt Cabana. And Punk, of course, used to be best friends with Colt Cabana, and they had a huge falling out many, many years ago. Realistically, I do not know what my stance on that situation is, because realistically, that is Punk's business to deal with. And, of course, CM Punk took offense to that in, of course, stories that came out months later when Punk came back after his injury that he caused himself. So fast forward to the week after CM Punk returned after his foot injury, and it was the opening segment on Dynamite in which Punk basically calls out Hangman Page. Now, you the viewer watching, is like, what the hell? Why is Punk mentioning Hangman Page if he's facing Moxley at the pay-per-view? And then all of a sudden the next day, stories come out that Punk was going into business for himself in quote-unquote retaliation towards Hangman Page. Now, you, the viewer, watching the whole Hangman Page and CM Punk promo leading up to Double or Nothing, you, the viewer, really didn't see anything offensive regarding Colt Cabana, nothing. In fact, if I was actually watching the show, I was actually more intrigued on what I was watching, because Hangman had that one line saying, "I'm not going to be defending this championship from you. I'm going to be defending All Elite Wrestling from you." But apparently, CM Punk took offense to that. Fast forward, we go to All Out. Of course, Moxley and Punk had their, ratings poll match that happened a couple of weeks prior, but Punk did win the championship in a very good match that he had against Jon Moxley. If you guys didn't check out my All Out review, make sure to watch my All Out review. It's available. The link is in the description below. But Punk wins the championship, MJF's return. We lead to the media scrum. And the first thing Punk does is sit down and asks everybody, do any of you consider yourselves a journalist? And he turns to Nick Hausman of Wrestling Inc. and basically mentions Colt Cabana. He mentions Colt Cabana and goes completely off. Now, apparently the story is that the Bucks, or the Elite, the EVPs, leaked false information to the dirt sheets saying that Punk, wanted to get either Colt Cabana fired, or Punk was the main reason as to why Colt Cabana was moved to Ring of Honor, because he's no longer a part of the AEW roster. And this is the quote by CM Punk, and I quote, "Now, it's 2022. I haven't been friends with this guy since at least 2014, late 2013. The fact that I have to sit up here because we have irresponsible people who call themselves EVPs and couldn't fucking manage a target, and they spread lies and bullshit and put into the media that I got somebody fired when I have fuck all to do with him, want nothing to do with him, do not care where he works, where he doesn't work, where he eats, and where he sleeps. And the fact that I have to get up here and do this in 2022 is fucking embarrassing. And if all of you are at fault, fuck you. If you're not, I apologize. What did I ever do in this world to deserve an empty-headed fucking dumb fuck like Hangman Adam Page to go out on national television and fucking going to business for himself? For what? What did I do? What did I ever do? Didn't do a goddamn thing." It's not Tony Khan's position to make it very fucking clear. Of course, that is meaning that Punk realistically didn't have anything to do with Punk's moving to ROH. And continuing on with the quote right here, "There's people who call themselves EVPs that should have fucking known better. This shit was none of their business. I understand sticking up for your fucking friends. I fucking get it. I stuck up for that guy more than anybody, okay? I paid his bills until I didn't, and it was my decision not to." End quote. So that was realistically the gist of what CM Punk stated in the media scrum. So CM Punk was really the one that instigated this whole thing. Nobody asked him about Colt Cabana. That was what I initially thought. But if you actually, because people were actually clipping this whole thing and they forgot to leave in the beginning portion of the media scrum. But if you actually watch the whole media scrum, which that, by the way, will also be in the link in the description below, Punk was the one that mentioned Colt Cabana. He asked, "Who did you work with?" And and Nick Hausman was like, Colt Cabana. And then Punk just went off on Colt Cabana. So what are my thoughts on this initial tirade that CM Punk went on the media scrum? Look, if the Bucks were the ones that, again, leaked false information about CM Punk to the dirt sheets, Punk has every right to be upset. But at the same time, the way Punk went about it was the wrong way to do it, considering the fact that you're in public, in front of the media, right next to your boss who's paying you millions of fucking dollars, Tony Khan, and you're going off on a tangent on the EVPs. You're talking about Colt Cabana, and you're talking shit on Hangman Page. Not to mention, later on in that media scrum, he goes off and calls the entire AEW roster children. One year before, at the Sold Out United Center, where the United Center was actually sold out based off of rumor that CM Punk was actually going to come to AEW, one of the first things that Punk stated was, "There's a hell of a lot of young talent that I want to work with." Less than a year later, not even less than a year later, little over a year later, he basically goes off and says the whole AEW roster is a bunch of fucking children. And this, I guarantee you, set the roster really bad. And this is coming off the heels of the past couple weeks. Backstage have been absolutely insane for AEW. We've been hearing a lot of backstage drama going on regarding CM Punk and Hangman Page. At the same time, you got Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker not liking each other right now. And I tweeted this on Twitter a couple of weeks prior. Another thing is Eddie Kingston and Sammy Guevara. Eddie Kingston getting suspended. But I tweeted this a couple of weeks earlier. The AEW roster or the locker room right now is a fucking war zone, and I stand by that statement. It's a freaking war zone right now, and this is basically like this is literally like the creme de la creme of all drama. Now, on Wrestling Observer Radio, and I'm adding up to the story, Brian Alvarez reported multiple sources that there has been an altercation between the two parties after Punk gave comments during the media scrum. A security guard was seen running out of the scrum shortly after Punk left. Tony Khan was not informed of the situation until after the scrum was wrapped up, and as of 1:41 a.m. Central Time Monday, everyone was still in the building. Dave Meltzer described the situation as a melee. Punk sounded off during Monday's media scrum, dismissing speculation regarding himself and Colt Cabana, who was moved to the Ring of Honor roster following Khan's purchase of the company earlier this year. He eventually made negative remarks regarding Hangman Page for his promo prior to their match at Double or Nothing earlier this year as accused EVPs and was quote-unquote spreading lies and bullshit to the media. So there was an altercation happening backstage. Now, apparently what happened there was, the story is that the Bucks, entered his locker room banging at his door, and apparently the story was they kicked down the door and there was a whole fight that broke out. You had Ace Steel, who is one of Punk's best friends, and of course, if you guys do not recall Ace Steel, he was actually the one that gave Punk this motivational promo on the Go Home Dynamite before this past Sunday's All Out pay-per-view, and that led to, of course, Punk versus Moxley. Ace Steel apparently threw a chair at Nick Jackson and bit Kenny Omega, and all this crazy bullshit that was happening. Now, as a report, AEW members suspended after all-out altercation. Of course, this is by Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated, who broke the news. And I quote, "The all-out press conference revealed one of the dirtiest secrets in pro wrestling from time to time. What happens behind the curtain is more fascinating than what takes place in the ring. This was the case as Sunday night moved to Monday morning. CM Punk at the post-match press conference and took a flamethrower to the AEW locker room, laying into fellow wrestlers, specifically to Hangman Page, the company's executive vice presidents, who are Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, as well as Colt Cabana. The focus of the press conference should have been on the stunning return of MJF, but the major plot line became nearly non-existent as Punk went entirely off script in his critiques. Once Punk exited the press room, he exchanged words in a locker room with Omega and the Bucks, which led to a physical altercation. Punishment for that backstage fight, Sports Illustrated has learned, will include suspensions for every person involved. The list of those receiving suspensions include Omega, Matt and Nick Jackson, Pat Buck. If you guys don't know who Pat Buck is, Pat Buck, I believe, is one of the producers in AEW who actually just came into the company a couple of months prior, I believe. Christopher Daniels, Michael Nakazawa, and Brandon Cutler. Multiple sources have shared that Punk and Ace Steel will either be among those suspended or will no longer be in the company by the end of Wednesday. Punk met with AEW owner Tony Khan on Tuesday, so the two had an opportunity to discuss how that exit should be handled. Per sources, an external third-party investigation will be conducted. Now, this is some serious shit. Page had already left the building. Sports Illustrated learned, which explained his absence from the altercation. Punk's fury was ignited during the press conference when he made mention of his former friend Colt Cabana. Rumors have circulated that Punk had Cabana moved to the Ring of Honor brand, and Punk clearly believes that those rumors emanated from leaks within the company, possibly even from Omega and the Bucks. Punk vehemently denied involvement in any facet of Cabana's career, and that topic of discussion set him off. All this occurred at the press conference where Punk sat beside Tony Khan, and it was an awkward, uncomfortable, and unprofessional scene. Punk is AEW World Champion, which adds another layer to this mayhem right here. Punk and Omega are the inaugural World Trio Champions as well, of course, as they defeated Hangman Page and the Dark Order, which was a fantastic match, by the way. Too bad nobody's going to talk about that shit because of this bullshit. Remarkably, there could still be a positive outcome if Punk and FTR engage in a heated feud with Omega and the Bucks. I do not even know what they're talking about here, but we'll talk about that later on. But that was the Sports Illustrated report that the link will be in the description on. This is where I read it from. Of course, thanks to Justin Barrasso. He was the one that broke the news. So apparently the Elite, also other producers like Christopher Daniels, Pat Buck, and they got suspended. And Tony Khan made the right decision in suspending them. But as I've stated, I'm not going to point the blame at one person and take sides on another person. A lot of people on social media have been taking sides on the whole situation. At the end of the day, everybody, CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Tony Khan, Ace Steel, all the people that were involved at that altercation right after Punk left the media scrum are all at fault. I don't care what anybody fucking says in the comments. Everybody is at fault here. And at the end of the day, realistically, all this mayhem is lying on the lap of Tony Khan. Because Tony Khan, if you watch the media scrum, CM Punk is right next to him. CM Punk is like right next to Tony Khan, and you see like this nervous look on Tony Khan's face, like he doesn't want to piss him off. Tony Khan is the one that's paying CM Punk. He is the one that is paying CM Punk, and Punk is going off on a tirade. He should have been talking about the pay-per-view and talking about MJF, and he basically did later on after his tirade, talked about MJF and called him a prick. So realistically, he kind of stayed kayfabe with that. But again, he wasn't talking about the pay-per-view. He was talking about all the bullshit drama that was going on. So my stance on this is Tony Khan realistically needs to have control of his roster, and almost everybody is saying this. Tony Khan needs to stop being a fan and be more of a fucking boss, because if this shit continues to escalate, it's not going to look good for AEW at all. And this is happening at the worst possible time, considering the fact that right now WWE is there's new management in WWE, and the perception a couple of months prior was everybody wants to join AEW. Now, ever since Triple H took over, it looks like the tides have turned. Right at the same time as this is going on, Malachi Black got his release, but he's still going to get paid while he is released. This shit is absolutely fucking insane. I mean, this is not a good look for the company. It's not a good look for CM Punk, and it's not a good look for Tony Khan as well for his company, because, you know, the environment that is going on in AEW right now is completely different than the environment that, you know, the All Friends Wrestling, the happy environment that the locker room had in year 1, year 2, hell, even year 3, right before CM Punk came in. This whole thing is absolutely insane. And apparently, Tony Khan had a meeting with CM Punk yesterday, and a decision will be made. That either Punk and Ace Steel, both of them, will either be suspended or will eventually get fired. Now, do I think CM Punk will get fired? Realistically, if they do fire CM Punk, it's going to be a big blow to the company. And you got a lot of people saying, oh, but AEW was fine without CM Punk before he came in. You're right, they were fine. I think they will be fine even after CM Punk. But at the same time, if you realistically think about it, Punk is their main star. He's their main star, and he's realistically their top draw. He's the top draw for AEW, and if they lose CM Punk, it's going to be very detrimental to the company. A lot of people are saying if the Bucks and Omega leave, that's going to be a really bad, you know, look on the company. It's going to be very detrimental to the company as well. And I agree. If the Bucks and Omega, because I believe this whole situation almost led with Omega and the Bucks walking out, and that would have been realistically horrible. But again, you know, if either of both sides ever walked out, it's going to be detrimental to the company regardless. Either if Punk walked out, it's going to be bad. If the Bucks and Omega walk out, it's going to be bad as well. This whole thing is a fucking mess. And if you also think about it, this whole situation that happened at the media scrum completely overshadowed everything, and I mean everything that happened at the pay-per-view. You know, everybody was talking about the trios finals between the Kenny Omega, the Bucks, and Hangman Page and the Dark Order, which was an amazing match. And as I've stated in the review, that match was so good because of the story element behind it. It took away everything. It took all the shine away from the Acclaim versus Swerve in Our Glory. That match was amazing. Everybody was saying that they should have called an audible in that match, but nobody is talking about that match, and it took away the spotlight on MJF, and that is the most messed up part of it, because if none of this went down, everybody would have been talking about MJF. So, again, this situation is really bad, and a lot of people are saying this, oh, it's good, it's a work. Look, there has been throughout the past couple of months, especially with AEW, and this is only happening with AEW, like, you know, everything, you know, any backstage situation Like, for example, the MJF situation, everybody was saying that's a work. Cody Rhodes, when he first left AEW, when he first announced that he was leaving AEW, everybody was thinking it was a work. I thought it was a work as well. And now this situation, people are saying, oh, it's a work. I'm sorry, but if there's legal issues involved with this whole backstage altercation, then this whole situation is far, and I mean far, from a work. There's no doubt about it whatsoever. This whole thing is far from a work. But I will say this, and a lot of people have been saying this, and Sports Illustrated, right in this article, did state in the end, they should turn this whole real-life situation into a work. Because realistically, real-life shit and, backstage conflicts do sell a lot in wrestling. That is like the main talking point. Sadly, drama fucking sells. And look, that is the sad truth, but it does sell. And I don't know what the hell are they going to do, but if they figure out a way, if all parties can agree finally, realistically, with something, they could possibly do something, maybe as Sports Illustrated said, Punk and FTR versus the Elite. That'd be an amazing ass match. Correct. Legit, that'd be an amazing match. But again, I do not know if that is going to be the case, especially how bad this situation is. And even another bad thing about this is the fact that CM Punk is the AEW World Champion. And he won that title on the same night, and he's going off on the EVPs. He's the world champion of your company, and he's setting a bad precedent. So we do not know what the hell is going to be going on with CM Punk, if he's going to get fired. My guess is that he's going to drop the belt to MJF immediately at Grand Slam, and he's going to have a hiatus, maybe be suspended for a couple of months. I do not know. Honestly, I do not know. This situation is realistically getting out of hand, and it's not a good look for AEW at all. I don't want to see AEW crumble like this. Look, they're not going to go out of business. If anybody thinks that, they're fooling you, because those are the same people that live in the fucking past and constantly talk about WCW. But again, I don't know, man. This stuff is not, it's just not, it's something waiting to explode, and it's not a good look at all, and it's going to lead to people leaving the company once their contracts are up, and that's the harsh reality. And I know the AEW fans are going to get fucking pissed off, but it's the God's honest truth. And if this shit continues, if all this backstage stuff continues, it's not a good look for the company, and the wrestlers are going to want to leave. That's all I'm going to say about this. But that is my entire, those are my entire thoughts on this whole media scrum drama that is going on. Again, Tony Khan needs to act more like a boss and less than a fan. I appreciate everything that Tony Khan has done, because without Tony Khan, of course, and also without the Elite, but realistically, Tony Khan is like the money guy. Him and his family is the money guy, and they were basically the ones that kind of brought AEW to the stratosphere. The Elite is a part of that as well. But again, Tony Khan needs to act less like a fan and more like a boss, and you have to take action immediately. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, those were my thoughts on the entire media scrum. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast. And as always, it is Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out.